On this episode of Firepower, command the mechanized might of a U.S. Army Infantry Division, the largest force on the battlefield. Organized into highly mobile combat units and armed with the latest weapons, this division is a lethal fighting force. Outmaneuver the enemy with M1 Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, and Apache attack helicopters. Unleash the raw power of an armor force. Next.
The basic combat formation of modern land armies is the division. Divisions contain all of the elements needed to wage land combat, including infantry, armor, artillery, and other supporting arms. Divisions are substantial in size, from 10,000 to 20,000 troops, nearly 500 armored vehicles, and 2,000 other vehicles. The divisions of today's U.S. Army can be categorized into two groups: the heavy maneuver division, such as armor and mechanized infantry divisions, and the light divisions, including light infantry, airborne, and air assault divisions. The heavy maneuver divisions are the largest and most powerful divisions on today's battlefield, combining a potent mixture of tanks, infantry, artillery, attack helicopters, and logistic support. Two types of heavy maneuver divisions exist: armor divisions and mechanized infantry divisions. The names of these divisions might suggest that they are substantially different in composition and equipment. But in fact, armor and mechanized infantry divisions today are very similar to one another.
You'll find that all the heavy divisions, be they infantry or armor, pretty much are a mirror of each other, except for one difference of one battalion, one armor battalion. We'll have a mix of Bradley fighting vehicle infantry battalions and M1 tank battalions. That mix gives us a good balance for firepower, for movement, and for communications, command and control. With that, we'll have self-propelled artillery to back them up. A 155 millimeter plus a battery of MLRS, and the multiple launch rocket system that was so effective in Southwest Asia. There's a battery in each division. We also have an aviation brigade that includes one battalion of Apache helicopters, day-night, long-range precision weapons, and a battalion of general support aviation, Blackhawks and some Hueys. And we also include with that some of the small observation helicopters that are used to designate artillery, precision artillery fires, the OH-58 Delta.
The composition of mechanized infantry and armor divisions is due to the evolution of land tactics since World War I. In the First World War, before the invention of the tank, most armies were based around infantry divisions. During the war, infantry divisions alone proved lacking when faced with new innovations in tactics and technology, especially new machine guns and artillery. Tanks were a technological solution to part of the problem. But a greater problem remained. How should modern combat arms, the tank, the infantry, the artillery, be organized to best perform on the battlefield? World War II saw considerable experimentation with new tactics, including units based mainly around tanks. By the end of the war, a consensus began to emerge called combined arms. The divisions which had proven most successful were a careful blend of infantry, armor, and artillery. Each had their strengths and weaknesses, but the strengths of one often overcame the weakness of the other. So was born the modern heavy maneuver division. The importance of the maneuver division today does not mean that other forms of combat have been ignored or abandoned. Take the case of infantry. Mechanized infantry is a heavy maneuver version of infantry. But more traditional forms of infantry still exist in the form of light infantry, airborne, and air assault divisions. Heavy maneuver divisions are well suited to high-intensity conflicts, such as in Europe or in the deserts of the Mideast, as was so clearly demonstrated during Operation Desert Storm. But light infantry has proven essential in low-intensity conflicts and guerrilla wars unsuitable for heavy maneuver divisions, such as Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, and Panama.
When you say mech infantry versus light infantry, you will have more guys on the ground in a light infantry unit than you will in a mech infantry unit when you talk about dismounts. And there is terrain where you've got to send the light infantry in, and there are situations where the light infantry can go in, where the maneuverability is not there with the tracked vehicles. You just can't do it. Swamps, the bogged down areas, you can't do it. When you talk about combat in the cities, can we do that in the mech infantry? Yes, we can do that. We can do it very well. The light infantry can do it, and they can do it just as well, in some cases better, because of the number of people they can put on the ground. When you talk about restricted terrain, the mountains, in some cases the jungles, the swamps, the marshy areas, these guys can't go there. But the light infantry can get in there, and there are situations where we've got to put those people in. With our Army configured as it is today, we're prepared for any contingency. And there's a role for the light forces, there's a role for the airborne forces, there's a role for the mech forces.
The maneuver divisions are so named for their tactical mobility. The heavy maneuver divisions substitute motor power for human endurance.
When I was in a regular infantry unit in Vietnam and so on, I carried a map and would routinely plan on moving 1 to 2 kilometers per hour. In a mechanized or armored division, you carry a map sheet, and let me emphasize the plural of that, and you routinely plan to move 25 to 30 kilometers an hour, routinely. Routinely. And that's day, night, all weather, any conditions, for long periods of time. Whereas when you're carrying a rucksack, you're going 2.5 kilometers an hour max. And after about 3 or 4 days, if you don't have a chance to stop and rest and clean up and get some hot food, you're just about pushing the limit.
An Army division is a complex organization built around many smaller combat formations. The smallest unit is a squad. Several squads make up a platoon. A tank platoon, for example, has 4 tanks. Several platoons form a company. Several companies form the basic maneuver element called a battalion. A tank battalion has over 55 tanks. Several battalions together form a brigade. A division is made up of several brigades. In this program, we will examine 4 types of combat units in a division and see what their roles are in the broader framework of modern land combat. One of the most critical questions in the evolution of modern maneuver tactics has been the relationship of infantry and tanks. Some theorists in World War II thought that the tank would dominate the battlefield by itself. But it soon became apparent that in many situations, tanks without infantry would be vulnerable.
You got to realize that missions will dictate how you use your forces. We have sometimes what we call armored country, tank country, and then we have infantry country. And it can be in the desert, or it can be here in the woods of Fort Stewart. Tanks need maneuver space to maximize that firepower, that speed, that shock effect. And as long as you got that maneuver space and you can run them hard and you can fire on the move and destroy things and do it rapidly, you don't have a problem. But you're going to hit terrain and you're going to hit enemy, you're going to hit obstacles that the tanks can't maneuver through or get through. There will be terrain. There will be restricted terrain, similar to here at Fort Stewart, that tanks got to line up like ducks in a row and get through there. Well, the enemy can put a tank killer team on the other end of this road, knock out the first tank and stop the entire convoy. Well, that guy has to be eliminated. Tankers will not dismount to go do that. They've got 4-man crews. we can put our mech infantry on the ground. They can clear these obstacles. They can clear the resistance in the wood lines. They can clear the resistance in the passes. It's a combined arms team. And the tanks, the Bradleys will fight where the tanks fight. And when the tanks get bogged down, we've got to go in and clear them out and allow the tanks to continue their maneuver.
Heavy maneuver divisions, such as the 24th Infantry Division, use mechanized infantry battalions. The principal difference between a mechanized infantry battalion and a traditional infantry battalion is the use of infantry fighting vehicles in the mechanized battalions.
Well, I would say specifically the mechanized designation tells you that they primarily move and shoot with armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles and tanks. And that differentiates from, say, a pure infantry division.
Infantry vehicles evolved along with mechanized infantry tactics. The U.S. Army infantry vehicle for World War II was the M3 half-track. Such a vehicle had a limited amount of armored protection, and its rear tracks gave it better mobility in rough terrain than an Army truck. In the 1950s and 60s, infantry vehicles evolved into fully tracked armored personnel carriers, such as the M113. These vehicles were completely armored, though not as thickly armored as a tank. In the 1980s, the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle emerged. The main advantage of the Bradley over earlier vehicles is its tremendous firepower, a 25mm autocannon and a pair of tow-guided anti-tank missiles on the turret.
The 113 APC, Armored Personnel Carrier, was literally a carrier. It carried the infantry to the fight. At that point, they dismounted, got out, and fought as traditional infantrymen have done for centuries. The Bradley fighting vehicle gives you a whole new aspect, both in cross-country mobility, firepower, both range, lethality, and the fact it's a stabilized gun system. Day, night, cross-country, it can shoot on the move accurately. And then it gives you the enhanced communications of a vehicle-mounted radio, plus the protection. Right now, with the Bradley, it will take up to 23 millimeters and survive well. For those reasons, the Bradley gives you those advantages that give you a great, what I call a great step up.
Infantry vehicles expand the tactical options of the infantry commander. In some situations, the infantry can remain inside the armored protection of the Bradley. But if the circumstances demand it, the infantry can dismount from the Bradley and conduct the mission on foot using traditional infantry tactics. Each Bradley infantry fighting vehicle carries 6 infantrymen in the rear compartment.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Right side down! Left side down!
Dismounting the soldiers is going to be a mission requirement. Okay, we're going to dismount our soldiers when we have to clear trench lines. We're going to dismount our soldiers when we have to clear choke points or maneuver through certain danger areas. For any on-the-ground hand-to-hand conflicts, naturally you're going to have to dismount the soldiers. They're going to be the ones that do the close-in fighting, and they're going to be the ones that secure the enemy prisoners of war.
Tanks provide the shock force of modern land armies. They overwhelm an enemy with firepower and mobility, and they protect themselves with thick shields of armor. The U.S. Army's current main battle tank is the M1A1 Abrams. The M1A1 is a modernized version of the M1 Abrams, going from a 105mm main gun to a 120mm gun. The latest versions also incorporate important improvements, including added armor protection. As imposing as such a tank is, there is still the need for close cooperation between the infantry and the tanks on today's battlefield. One of the threats that most worries tankers is the enemy infantrymen armed with small portable anti-tank rockets and missiles. When enemy infantry is present, tankers need friendly infantry. Tanks and infantry can be used side by side. But normally, combined arms tactics mean using tank units and infantry units. For example, a company of mechanized infantry and a company of tanks operating on the same mission. When used in such a fashion, the situation will dictate the tactics. Because the tank is more thickly armored than the Bradley, the tanks often lead the attack. The Maneuver Division has an impressive amount of firepower at its disposal. Besides the direct fire provided by the tank guns and Bradleys, indirect fire from artillery battalions and the firepower of attack helicopters can further contribute to the combined arms battle. Artillery has long been called the king of battle. Artillery can pound enemy positions before an attack, gravely weakening the enemy. In maneuver formations, such as the 24th Infantry Division, the Field Artillery Brigade concentrates this firepower. The divisional artillery weapons in maneuver formations are mounted on tracked vehicles to ensure that the artillery can move with the tanks and mechanized infantry. The backbone of the division's artillery is the M109 self-propelled 155mm howitzer. There are 2 battalions of these in the division, totaling 48 howitzers. These battalions can each deliver a ton of projectiles and high explosives in a single salvo. Adding to the punch of the howitzers is a battalion of MLRS artillery rocket launchers. A single one of its 12 rockets can devastate an area the size of a football field. Helicopters have added a new dimension to the maneuver division. The division's aviation brigade performs a wide variety of roles, using several types of helicopters. The UH-60 Black Hawk is the basic troop carrier. The CH-47 Chinook provides heavy lift capability and can even lift vehicles and light artillery. The AH-64 Apache serves with the division's attack helicopter battalion. For firepower support, nothing matches the AH-64 Apache. A maneuver division, such as the 24th Infantry, has a single Apache attack helicopter battalion with a total of 18 of these helicopters. The Apache can provide the ground forces with 3 main types of firepower. Its 30mm cannon can destroy lightly armored vehicles. Its 2.75-inch rocket pods give it high explosive firepower, much like an airborne artillery platform. Its most lethal weapon is the Hellfire anti-tank missile. The Hellfire is laser-guided. It has a range in excess of 5 miles and can destroy any tank in existence. The Apaches can serve as the division commander's reaction force. Because of their great speed compared to ground vehicles, the Apaches can race to nearly any trouble spot and provide concentrated pinpoint firepower.
If it's within artillery range, I think the commanding general would use artillery and his ground forces to take care of it. When it's out on the fringes of that capability, then he would use attack helicopters. Now, when you think about the firepower that you get from both artillery, ground forces, and the attack helicopter, it's just a dynamite combination that if you can go out beyond the artillery and start blunting his nose with attack helicopters, by the time he gets to your ground forces, he's attrited to the point where he's not a combat force anymore. So that's the idea.
As was so clearly demonstrated by the 24th Infantry Division in the Gulf War, the power of modern armies depends on a combination of technology, training, tactics, and organization. Technology alone does not win wars. Well-organized combat units, rigorously trained and skillfully led, are the heart of today's armor forces.
Infantrymen recall crossing the Rhine in the final push towards Berlin on GI Diary. Then stay with Discovery as sailors go through underwater demolition training to become Navy SEALs on The Adventurers.